Beginnings, new starts, leaders set themselves up for success. But how do you do it? We spend our lives setting everyone else up to be marvellous. But are you looking after your own setup? What do you need to think about before your new job begins, or the new term begins, or to set a new leader up for success? Let's explore this and see if we can get some really strong stepping stones and foundations set. Let me break this into 4 parts. Practicalities and the tangibles, the culture stuff, the deeper thinking and slightly intangible, priorities that I think are there, and then finally a little bit of leader beware. Okay, practicalities. What are the tangibles? What are the things we need to really think about right from the beginning? To start with, delegations, tasks and roles. Are you clear about your role, what your responsibilities are? Where does your line of authority begin and end, and what is expected of you? Do you understand the continuum of delegation? Go back to the delegation blog and bust that out. It's really critical at this time. Where does your role fit on this? And then, have you thought about this for those that you lead? And do they know it? Establish systems and processes and norms. Clarity about what we do, why we do it, and how it gets done. Right, second, planning. Planners, scheduling. Have you set up for the term for the year? Do people know what's coming? Is there a calendar of events? When, where they have to be, and what is expected of them? The more direction you can give people about how their time is going to be used and spent and what you want from them, the greater clarity they have. With clarity, they get confidence and they have a greater sense of direction and control. Do watch for overload. Too much scares people. Okay, that cool space, that office space or your workspace, are you set up? Where is your desk? Do you sit behind the desk or not? I've never sat behind my desk in my office. It's always been shoved against a wall. Is your desk a workspace or a talk space? Do you have systems for paper? Where do you meet and connect with people? How do you get messages? How do people get messages to you? Do you have whiteboards, pin boards, glass notice boards, message boards? Do you have a beverage stop? Okay, quality assurances. It's not somebody else's job, it's your job at every stop. How do you make this happen? And no, it's not just checking. But what are you doing every day to set yourself up? And what are your QA processes and timings? How will this be a regular, deliberate act of your leadership? Meetings. What dates, times, expectations? Read Death by Meeting and The Joy of Work. Take care. Don't meet for the sake of meeting, and please have a purpose. Make them useful, make them meaningful. Agendas. Are you going to use them? Do your team want them or not? It's not mandatory. Logistics, arrivals and dismissals, staff and students, how, when, who. Give people clarity. Expectations, kind of like the norms. What hours, times, classes, dress, again, clarity. Tell me the rules so I know how to play and win this game. So set me up for success. Resources and materials. What am I allowed to use and what am I not allowed to use? Where are they? Is there anything I can't use? How do I get things I can't find? And can I use a textbook? And what place do PowerPoints have? Seeking feedback. How are you going to check in and seek feedback about your impact and decisions? Plan it now. And how do you give feedback? Explain the processes from people. No hidden agendas. Tell me what I can expect from you. Communication pathways. Who do your team talk to about what and when? How will you communicate with your team? What can they expect? Are you going to ask them how they like to be communicated with? How do they like to find out about new ideas? Do they mind if you pop in and ask to see them later? Or is that going to make them really anxious and nervous? Or would they prefer an email? Or do emails cause anxiety? Do they mind receiving a sticky note? And how do they like to be recognised when they do something well? Do they like public affirmation? Chocolate, coffee, are they important, or time out? How do they like to get good news? And when they aren't doing so well, things that aren't so pleasant? Your way might not be their way of communicating, but I tell you what, they will love you if you ask them how and you follow through on that. It may have to be personal and personalised to different people. Cyber etiquette. When do we send emails and messages across our team? Remember, emails are for the ancient, and a lot of people don't operate via email anymore. It's more about old people that do that. Life has moved on for most beyond email. When I get an email or a message, what are your expectations? How long do I have to have until I must reply? And what can we send and what isn't appropriate? Reply all or reply to sender? Set the limits and create the norms. There'll be other things, add them to this list. Okay, challenge. Write your leadership philosophy. What type of leader do you want others to see and to experience? And what don't you want to be? I dare you to write it, print it, and share it. Make it part of your daily life, or even your performance review. Okay, we've buzzed off on that one. Let's jump down to culture. Some of those more intangible things, the heart of the things, the deeper thinking. Who, how often, and where will you interact with others? I'll give you a hint. Go to the people. Don't just say, I've got an open door policy and come in and see me as you need. They won't come. The people that need you won't come. They'll be too nervous, scared, anxious, or worried about it themselves, no matter how nice you are. Track who you talk with, when and how often. Who are you missing? Temperature checks, and no, I'm not talking COVID-related things here. How are you checking in on the climate and the culture of your team? Are you leading by walking about? Be visible, be seen every day. When are you going to walk about and why? Go beyond checking, meet and get to know your people. The impact is huge. Time, where are you spending it? Track it. If you are spending more than 40% of your time in your office or at your computer in that seat, move. Change it because you need to. People, who are your priority people? Keep them as your priority and keep people as your priority. Don't interfere into someone else's domain. Who are your people? Who are the other people's people? Let them manage their people. Manage your own team. Communicate up and keep your boss in the loop regularly. Learn the continuum of delegation. This is the second time I've talked to you about it in this little piece. We can't say it enough. Now, how are you going to create the calm? And are you creating the calm? Leaders take the problem out of the day and they work it out for their team. Start with your why before your what and your how. Help people understand why they have to do something before you jump into what they're doing and how they do it. Create capacity. Teach a man a fish, don't give him one. You know that story. How are you creating independence, not codependence? Part of that is don't micromanage. Discuss the non-discussables. Have the difficult conversations. Don't avoid them. They are hard to have and they are critical. Throw the rocks out of the river and let the conversations flow again. Build skills, not gap filling. Take the time to teach people. It might take longer, but you're playing the infinite game. Think longer term. Decision making. How does this happen in your team? How do you react to questions and suggestions? Are you really open to having other people decide? Stay focused. Know your priorities. This is a really interesting one. Add new things strategically. Just because somebody's come up with a new idea or you see something that might work, think really, really carefully about whether you will or should implement it. Understand your why. And what we say is avoid being the overburdened, decorated Christmas tree, because it becomes rather unsightly and quite ghastly, actually. And, understand your why and decorate that tree carefully. Be really strategic about what things you want to do And don't do it just because everybody else is doing it. Do it for the right reasons. Be slow to react. Take your time. Be truthful in your self-reflection, even if it hurts a little. And that remember that sometimes 90% is good enough, even 80%. So then, what are your priorities? Well, for me, these are always priorities as a leader. Recognise people. Be visible to the people. Walk before you phone or send an email, before you message. How are you going to use the skills of your team? Use a schedule, not a list. Personally, I'm talking about for you. Don't write a list. Put it into the plan, into a slot in the day. Your stress levels will halve. Data, breathe it. Learn to love it. It can happen. Prioritise your first team. Who are your people priorities? As I said before, let other people get on with their business and their teams. Build the capacity of the people that you need to build the capacity of your direct reports and people that are closest to you, so that they can work with their first teams. EQ, know yourself first and then your team. And then add everything else that you see as a priority, but make sure it is a priority. Finally, leader beware. People feel that they have to check things to be seen to be doing their job. Don't check things that don't need it. Office dwelling, get out. Email entrapment, don't get stuck with being stuck to emails and responding to messages and waiting for the next email to pop in. Set times to manage it. Stop only dealing with the urgent, because everything will become urgent at the expense of the important. Death by meeting, I say no more. Micromanaging, don't get tangled in details and the trivia. Stop doing things for people, it can cripple them. Being too hands-off, though, is just as bad. Telling and talking at, start listening. Only ever put things in writing that are absolutely necessary, whether it's a message, an email, a letter. They last forever. And don't catch every ball that gets thrown. Are you only listening to the squeaky wheel and everyone's problems and reacting? New beginnings and new starts are so exciting. The energy and the bounce are infectious. The road is hard. The reality is that it is incredibly busy to begin with, but every step is closer towards the goal. Hard can be fun. Think, plan, and find joy in the journey.